Hey free-to-play gang, welcome back to another video. Now, we finally have a very, literally really terrible Esper in the new lineup. Okay, so the Esper is going to be Elaine. I was so disappointed because I thought that she was probably going to be the most exciting Esper. But the thing is, her damage is actually really bad. It's really quite terrible. Okay, so let's take a look at her third skill again, right? So this skill has up to a 275% multiplier on her third skill, and we have already discussed that Leora has up to 406% multiplier on her second skill. This skill is not only dealing so little damage, but at the same time, right, even if we ignore defense on sleeping targets, because number one, you need to make sure that the enemy is asleep first before you... Okay, maybe this skill can... Okay, never mind. Ignore what I just said. When the enemy is asleep, you have a 50% chance of ignoring 25% defense, which is really not going to add a lot to her kit. Surprisingly, I'm actually really surprised that it doesn't add a lot to her damage. But okay, so the point I was trying to address is that the enemy needs to be asleep first in order for you to ignore defense, right? But because she multi-hits, if she lands asleep at the start, then yes, the rest of her hits are possibly going to ignore defense afterwards. Now, as for her second skill, this skill, right, each debuff on the enemy grants plus 5% damage. I'm very sure that this is bugged. So I'm going to go through why exactly this is bugged later on, and I hope the devs can respond to this. I'll give them a feedback and show them this video clip as well so that they can use whatever information they need to prove that there is indeed some issue with her second skill. Alright, so as you can see on the left, this is going to be the setup. We need to have two things on the enemies at all times. One is going to be a defense break, and another is going to be a sleep, so that we can just ensure that we have the maximum amount of damage done. So we're going to go ahead and do a third skill damage test. Alright, so we're going to target this guy on the right because he has relatively mediocre defense. So this is going to be like a better showcase as opposed to hitting the guy on the left, right? This guy over here. So we're going to use our third skill, and this is going to do 275% multiplier. And what you realize is that when one of our multi-hits actually land asleep, the rest of our damage actually has a chance to ignore defense afterwards. So do take note that the damage numbers go upwards like that, and the debuffs go downwards. So when you see a sleep appearing somewhere around like the top, then every subsequent damage is going to have a chance of ignoring defense. So something like this, check this out. Yep, there you go. So the last number here, 9,100 and something, right? That was the actual 25% defense ignoring damage. So I actually had a screenshot earlier just to showcase the exact same thing here. So her normal attack damage is 7,603 without ignoring any defense. But as soon as she lands asleep on one of her attacks, her subsequent attacks will then have a chance of ignoring defense. That's just what I'm trying to get at. Now, in terms of her damage, with her current setup, and I haven't even shown you her relics just yet, but based on her current stats, she's going to do at most 45.6k damage if she ignores all the defense on all of her attacks. That's a very big if as well. So here are her stats, right? As you can see, her damage is okay, her attack is decent, her crit damage is slightly low end. So I think in terms of like an end game Elaine, what you're really looking at is probably like another 20% more final damage. So that's what I'm doing over here, right? I just basically multiplied my current final damage by like about another 1.2 to give me 54.7k damage. This is really very small. Like, this is what an end game optimal damage setup is gonna look like. With an attack buff, with a defense break, with a sleep, all your hits are ignoring defense. It's only 54k. That's it. Even Biodina can hit about 60 to 70k easily. Anyway, that is just her third skill test. We need to test out her second skill this time around. And this is like completely broken. I've done so many tests and I'm very sure that it doesn't make sense. Like, there is definitely something wrong with her second skill that needs to be looked at. But that's fine because this is still currently in the PTR server, right? So there's bound to be bugs. Alright, so as you can see, this Esper here, he has currently 6 debuffs on himself. And yes, do take note that your silver rim debuffs still count as debuffs. It's not the same as gold rim debuffs. Those do not count as debuffs. Neither do gold rim buffs count as buffs. So this guy has 6, right? And with my second skill, we can actually land another 2 more debuffs here. So what we should see, and I think this is correct, but the maximum damage that we should see if we ignore defense is 6,500 and something. If he goes any higher, I'll be super surprised. Let's check this out. Wait, what? 7,100. Okay, so it went up a bit more, but that is really surprising. What the heck? Okay. I understand what the bug is right now. Okay, I fully understand where the issue is. Okay, so as you can see, I've done a lot of tests to try to figure out what's wrong here. But her second skill is indeed bugged. So what you notice is that her last 4 attacks, right? Basically the top 4 attacks here, they always bounce in between 5464 and 6560, which is perfectly fine. Because 5464 is supposed to be the non-defense ignored damage, and 6560 is supposed to be the defense ignored damage, which is okay. But the problem with that is that actually maintains, like all of her 4 hits up here, they actually maintain this specific orientation. Like it's either 6560 or 5464. And the only number that is changing is actually just the first hit. As you can see, it's literally just the first hit. And that first hit is dependent on the number of debuffs that the enemy has at the start. So for this case where we started off with, I think, like 6 debuffs, right? Yeah, so this is the reason. As you can see here, 5 debuffs, I would then land 6,830. But for 6 debuffs, I would then land 7,104. This makes sense because this is increasing by an additive 5%. Yeah, this completely makes sense. Okay, so just to summarize, in case the devs are watching this, the issue here is that her last 4 hits are not actually scaling according to debuffs. They're just fixed over there for some reason. I'm not sure why. Alright, so assuming that they fixed this bug, right? And all of our hits can actually scale according to debuffs correctly, and then further assuming that we can even scale all the way up to 12 debuffs, which I think is going to be possible, what that leaves us with is a total final damage multiplier of 5 times 12, which is 60, so a 1.6 times multiplication, which means that based on our current stats, we should be able to hit as much as 8,744, assuming that we have 12 debuffs on the enemy that we are attacking right now. 12 debuffs. And if you go on to scale our stats to end game stats, which is just like times 1.2 for example, that's going to push us to about 10,500 damage per hit. And if we multiply that by 5 hits, our total damage from our second skill on an enemy with 12 debuffs is 52.5k. That is extremely lousy. That's extremely terrible. Like the damage output is laughable. It's just really bad. And the reason, and the reason why I say that, right? Take a look at this. Let's just compare her to one random rare Esper. Right, so anyone ever heard of Zelmer? I surely have never ever heard of her. Take a look at this, right? Her base attack is also pretty good. She's just like shy of like 100 attack from Elaine, right? So Elaine has 1242, Zelmer has 1123, which is about 100 difference. And if you take a look at Zelmer's third skill, her base multiplier itself, her base skill damage multiplier is 250%, and this actually goes up to plus 120%, so she actually has a factor of 2.2 times. On the other hand, Elaine has a factor of 1.6 times. And what you can see here is that the scaling is crazy good. Like each debuff scales her DPS by 20%, a final damage multiplier. As for Elaine, it just scales by 5%, even though she can scale with more debuffs. But her final potential multiplier is still less, it's still 1.6 as opposed to Zelmer's 2.2. So essentially, if you want to go DPS heavy, Zelmer is probably going to do a lot more damage. But yes, I know she has some other stuff in her kit. Like for example, she has buff blocker, she has sleep, and she has a lot of sleep. And she has attack down, and yeah, she has more sleep. And of course on top of that, she also ignores defense, which will help her DPS output a little bit. But as you can see, going by just basic numbers itself, it seems like her defense ignoring damage doesn't even matter all that much. It's not dealing a crazy amount of damage. This 52k is like nothing. And her third skill, which does not need any setup whatsoever, is still doing more damage at 54.7k, even though that 54.7k is really nothing at all. So I feel like her kit is not tailored towards DPS for some reason, and I don't really know why this is the case. Okay, but anyway, that's it for the portion of her damage output. Now let me show you exactly why she has another major flaw in her system. Well, it's not really a major flaw in her system. But okay, let me just run something like this, and let me just show you what I'm trying to get at. So let's say we start the first turn, right? We are going to use our third skill, and we are going to go into our Night Goddess state. Right, so we have 2 turns of Night Goddess, which means every time we end our turn, we will end in a stealth as well. So that's why we are currently stealth. Now that it's our turn again, we are going to use our second skill, like so. And we're going to end in a stealth again, right? And now we have our turn once more, and we're going to use our first skill. And we lose our Night Goddess buff, right? We lose it, but we are still in stealth because we ended the turn with the Night Goddess, and then the Night Goddess just evaporated afterwards. So we still have stealth. So what you notice very quickly is when we take our turn again, take a look at this. We do not have our third skill up, and this is with a max skill version of her kit. So what I'm trying to get at is you will need one more duration of her Night Goddess buff. And how are you going to get the Night Goddess buff? Now the thing is, if you do not have Night Goddess buff on yourself, you're kind of useless. You have nothing on your kit. All you really have is just a normal attack here. Your multipliers and all that, they are not a lot. It's just essentially just a normal attack that probably has like a little bit more multiplier, like maybe like 150% or something like that, right? So if you use our first skill, it's only like 12,000 and who gives a shit? So the only way that I think that you can play her effectively is to either run her R6 so that she has perpetually the Night Goddess buff on herself. Because if you check out her R6, right, this is how she has perpetual Night Goddess. Or the other way is to have Leora on your team. And if you have Leora on your team, this is the only other way that you can have the correct setup on Elaine. So take a look at this. We start off with the War Goddess buff, like so. Right, and with the War Goddess buff, when we use our third skill, we will have 3 turns of Night Goddess. And the reason why this is so crucial, let me just show you again. Now we use our second skill, right? And we still have 2 more turns of this buff left. And now we use our first skill, right? And we still have 1 more turn. And why this is so important is because when we take our turn again, and we take another action, we are still going to go into stealth. And this is so important because now we are perpetually stealth. And when we take our next turn, we can go back into our Night Goddess state again. So you kind of understand the cycle here, right? You will need Leora in order for her to be fully effective. So Elaine is designed in a way where she needs Leora, and Leora does not need Elaine. As we have discussed about Leora like a few videos ago, Leora does not even need the War Goddess status at all. She always has it on all of her skills, and that's why she's dealing so much damage. Elaine, on the other hand, she's not dealing a lot of damage, and she has an over-reliance on Leora here. So Elaine is like the adopted sister, basically. So this really kind of sucks, and the fact that they gave us Elaine without giving us Leora means that you need to summon for Leora in order for you to even have your Elaine to be useful. If not, you need to push Elaine all the way to R6, which completely don't make sense. Because it's a lot easier to just buy 1 copy of Leora, so I hope this is clear. So my final thoughts on Elaine is that I don't feel like she carries a lot in her kit. In terms of her single target damage, she doesn't even compare to a lot of the different single target damage dealers out there. Like if you want to talk about single target damage, we have Sander, who is really good at single target damage because he's very fast at the same time. And we have Lewis, who is really good at single target damage. And I mean, come on, we even have Leora as well. Leora has insane single target damage. So then where else would she be useful for? Maybe in holo battles, but then again, who cares about holo battles, right? I mean, yeah, because her sleep is really good, her buff blocker is also really good. And for her second skill, she also has the attack debuff and of course her sleep as well. So she might be useful as a debuffing DPS expert, like not a pure DPS. More so for just putting 1 enemy to sleep, but we also have Jinhee. And no one is even thinking about using Jinhee because there is not much in her kit that is allowing her to change anything in the game right now. Aha, post-edit, very free to play here. There is of course one more place that she's gonna be really good at, Fafnir, because she has a lot of multi-hits and she buff steals on her second skill as well. And I don't really feel like it's gonna be a problem that she don't deal massive damage because you don't need a lot of damage to chop off 1 HP bar. So in that regard, she's still gonna be really good in Fafnir, I'm sure of it. So I really hope that I'm wrong about Elaine, so if you find that there is one way that she actually strives in, do let me know down in the comments below. I am struggling to figure out something, or at least somewhere where she's gonna strive at. Like even if you're talking about Furbeter, yes, she works as a debuffer, she works as a controller, and that's it. That's her entire role. And you are talking about Furbeter, who is the easiest Sentinel Hunt boss. Then what's the point? So anyway, that's it for this video. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed today's content. If you did, don't forget to thumbs up. It really helps the channel, and subscribe for more Dislyte content. Now with that said, this has been Very Free to Play, and as always, I will see you in the next video.